You guys! Oh my god, I've already made a video how to build a cathedral, but you guys didn't get it. You guys didn't get it. How do I build this? How do I build column? How do I build a vault? How do I build yada yada yada? We are going to make a video. That's why I decided we're going to make a video how to build a cathedral, because I built Gosberg Cathedral in 3 years, and over that time I thought, why don't I do it in less time, you know? Why don't I do it not in a year, not in a month, in 7 days? Because today we are going to learn how to make a cathedral from scratch. This is how to build a cathedral for dummies. Hello. The first thing that comes to making a cathedral is finding a suitable location. Now, I've marked a little spot for where we're going to build our cathedral. Oh, ignore this building. Let me just... There we go. Now, let's begin. The devil to actually make this thing. I've deduced the first thing that we have to do is make a floor plan. What's a floor plan, you might ask? Well, it's pretty straightforward. It's a floor
with a plan on top of it.
There's really not much else to it. Step 1, receive divine insight.
Divine light.
Got it? Great. Now, I've already drawn a floor plan of what exactly I want to build. Like Gosberg, we're going to build this cathedral quite overscaled to compensate the fact that it's in Minecraft. So we're going to build it about 400 blocks long and about 180 blocks wide. What I'm constructing here right now is one of the nave bays, which in plan make up the 8 segments of the cathedral and some other very important bits. And later we will replicate them to get the main body of the cathedral. Now I'm going to use a mod known as Axiom, which has been a real game changer in the last few months of building. And we're going to use a symmetry mod to build exactly what we're doing on this side on the other side. You'll notice in this plan I'm going to be placing some very important things that will be the crux of our cathedral, where the columns go and where the buttresses will be. These thick little nooks on the ends of the walls are the buttresses which support the massing of the overall cathedral. In the main plan, which I've dubbed as St. Gerion's Cathedral, you'll see that the spaces are divided into the narthex, the nave, the crossing, the transepts, and the ambulatory towards the back, which follow and pay homage to the traditional French Gothic plans. Hello, post-production KX for here, and I just want to say, this isn't a block-by-block tutorial. If it was, it'd probably be 80 years long, and I'd be dead by then. So this is a general gist of how to build one. Still great, informative guide. You should continue watching by all means. Don't be discouraged. Let me just pull a clip of me building and what it looks like. Yeah, it's foul. So if anything, it's easier to follow along with this than whatever the hell I'm doing there. So I just want to let you know. Okay, let's get back to the video. Now that we have a general plan constructed, we can finally mass out the structure. You've seen I've gone for quite a simplistic block palette where I've chosen granite, a few mud blocks, and some other random blocks. Now our main influence for this cathedral is Strasbourg Cathedral, but we're not entirely limited to just the one. We're going to create a nice homogeneous plan out of all these other different cathedrals we take influence from and see what we construct. But for now, we're going to construct a nave bay. The first thing that we will build is a Gothic arch, which is a pretty simplistic shape to actually construct. Here we're constructing a pointed arch with some trapdoors and fences to give the effect of tracery and mullions in its design. Now we fin out that general wall, and what we'll construct next is the buttresses to the cathedral. Better shown in section, we can actually observe how a cathedral structure works, where the weight is distributed from the roof on top to the vaulting down the columns and through the buttresses externally to the ground floor. The reason why buttresses have these long arms is so that the light of a cathedral can still penetrate the interior walls while supporting the main structure. Here we are constructing a simple floor plan for the nave and the aisle windows, and we'll now begin work on the interior columns. Columns are quite simple as they consist of 3 parts: a base, which we have here, the pillar shaft itself, and finally a main capital that tops the entire column. Here I am doing a rather simplistic approach where I'm just building the column out of granite and mud blocks with some wooden elements to sort of highlight, almost like a stone patchwork, and finally the stone capital at the top. Once we have one column, we can simply duplicate it and bridge the 2 columns with another Gothic arch. What we will now do is we'll construct a triforium above it, a little roof to cover that portion, and we can now finally begin on constructing the clerestory windows. Often the most decorated and illuminated parts to a cathedral, the clerestory windows are the largest part of the nave section, and with the construction of these ones, we have finished part of the nave section. We can now turn our attention to constructing the buttresses. Taking influence from Cologne Cathedral, we're going to build 2 arms that bridge onto the cathedral and finish the buttresses with a nice pinnacle on the top of them, made out of copper, and maybe add a lightning rod. And with that, we can finally copy the nave section on that side. And finally, we have partially one nave section done. Well, not really. There's no roof, but it's a start. But I think with that, we can call day 1 quite a good success. So, we'll see what day 2 brings. We'll see what day 2 brings. Oh my god, what am I saying? Who knows? I don't know what it brings. It brings pain. Day 2. What the f***? Ozzy Osbourne died! Day 2, and we've done quite a lot already in the first day. We nearly have a complete nave section, but you'll notice there's a couple things missing. 1, we ain't got no roof. Number 2, we ain't got no interior. Number 3, we ain't got no roof above that roof. And number 4, we don't have a cathedral. We're about 10% the way there, so we really gotta cram on today. But don't worry, I have a plan. Today, we're gonna complete the nave section. We're gonna complete the asp. We're gonna complete the transepts. Can we do it?
Maybe.
But we'll damn near try. So, let's get to it. Oh my god, another day, another dollar, am I right? So here, we're just going to go full bang, full boom. And we're just gonna go crazy. What we're doing now is we're building the internal vaulting of the aisles and of the main cathedral. What's vaulting, you might ask? Well, it's the roof structure of a cathedral. Think of it as 2 intersected cylinders that create this strange geometry, which are essentially just intersecting pointed arches, really. But you can see as we have built it out, we have this X patternation that we get from creating it. Above the vault for the aisle is the actual triforium space. You can see we're building some trusses. We have a little walkway for the actual triforium area, and after we have built the trusses, we can cover it with a copper roofing and move on to the next section, which is constructing the roof of the cathedral, the nave vault, and the stained glass windows. The nave vault is quite simple. It's pretty much the same concept as the aisle vaults, but it's much larger, obviously. I'm actually creating some Gothic arches either end, as this vault will be in the style of a classic Gothic ribbed vault. You can see I'm building a little framework for where the vaulted ceiling is actually going to go, with this deep slate acting as the ribs that you would see in typical Gothic architecture. Mainly Cologne Cathedral is our influence here, and we're going to start to infill it with some whitish blocks to give the effect of plaster, as you would see in the traditional Gothic cathedrals. And with that, we have a nice vaulted ceiling. You can see we'll add a little chandelier, illuminate the vaulted ceiling so you can see it a bit better, and we pretty much have a lovely ceiling at that point. But it's important to note that the vaulted ceiling isn't the roof, so now we're just going to externally cover it with a simple copper roof and pretty much done. Now we can turn our attention to actually doing the stained glass windows and filling them with, well, stained glass. You can see here I'm just doing a simple holistic pattern. I didn't really have any sketch or anything, and we'll copy onto the other side, and look at that. We now have pretty much a fully completed nave section, and it's pretty glorious. From this simple framework, we'll actually end up copying it and form the main body of the cathedral. We're going to use the cloning command. I don't really know what the bloody hell these other tools do.
If I know, it's like another dimension.
With it, we can take one simple section and create the rest of the cathedral with it. Now, I should stress, back in the day when I was doing Gosberg, I didn't have Axiom, and Minecraft Bedrock generously gave you essentially numbers and coordinates to actually clone stuff. You could still clone stuff, but it was a nightmarish process of actually mapping out coordinate points, and I would have to keep logs essentially of bits I wanted to clone. So shout out to Axiom. It's a great mod. You should definitely check it out, because it has taken what was essentially this ghoulish process here and essentially streamlined it so much better. And without Axiom, this cathedral would not be possible. And well, would you look at that? We now have a significant chunk of the cathedral done. You can see how from this section we have essentially created the general main body of the cathedral. But we're not done just yet. We need to build the asp. I'll be quite frank, I think I was on demon mode making this, but luckily in Axiom, you can essentially shear things by a 45-degree angle. The ambulatory is essentially the end of a cathedral. When cathedral was first built, this would be built first because you could block off one wall and create a chapel essentially. But here, what we're doing is we're taking the nave panels that we've already made, we're shearing it, as you can see there on that 45-degree angle, and we're essentially making a loop, because that's what ambulatory means, to walk, to do a loop of the cathedral circuit. And luckily, we only have to build one half of this because we can just mirror the other half. There's no need to build them both at the same time. But a lot of this is essentially shearing that nave segment and filling in the gaps, and obviously making the roof again from scratch, fixing the windows, fixing the buttresses externally. And all in all, it's not a convoluted process. If you're doing this from scratch, you're essentially just building the same segment, but now on a diagonal. And with nearly one half done, we can actually turn our attention externally to fix the buttresses. You can see they're really bulky towards the rear end because the asp actually has one of the largest vaults as it spans the greatest distance. You can see in this footage, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm going from one end of the other side to the other end, and we can finally mirror it onto the other side, and we get a lovely ambulatory. And I don't know how it really came together, but it came together. Would you look at that? Think of beauty it is. So with the asp now completed, we now have pretty much the length of our cathedral nearly done, and it is certainly a good marker to end day 2 on. But there's just one more thing I'd like to do. Day 3, and we've gotten quite a lot of it complete. We have finished the nave section, we've done the ambulatory, which is one of the hardest parts of the cathedral to build, and we added a little reliquary for Ozzy. Now our task today is finishing the transepts, and with that we will have completed almost the main body of the cathedral. Arguably, what's more complex is the transept facades, which we will get to. But for kicks and giggles, why don't we just build a root screen? Because why not? A root screen is pretty much just a really fancy divider in a cathedral. Behind it, you would have the high altar, which we just built it right there. It actually gives the cathedral a really nice focal point, as from a distance, you get that really nice layered effect with the root screen in front and the high altar cross behind it. But now we tackle a much difficult problem, building the transepts. The transepts are essentially building the nave section again, but we're turning 90 degrees because the transepts are the arms of the cathedral to form that cross pattern that you see in all those cathedral plans. But here we face an architectural problem, as the interior corner and the exterior corner are actually at different turns, creating this really skewed vaulted ceiling you see above.
We gotta go bald.
It works. Be a lot better than me though. Here we can finally construct the transept facades. We can start with the windows that will be facing the aisles before we actually move on to doing the main transept windows. Here what I'm doing is I'm actually bulking up the columns for the crossing, as you have to imagine that the crossing tower will be one of the heaviest parts of the cathedral, and now we can duplicate those corners that we constructed onto the other side, and with that we have the transepts completed. Well, almost completed, because now you'll notice that there is a big old hole on either end, and you know what, it looks good, but it could look a lot better. And we're going to construct the transept facade. What's the matter? Never constructed a transept facade before? As we're building St. Gerion's Cathedral, you might be wondering, why did I choose to call it St. Gerion's? Well, that takes us back quite a long time ago. It was a once cold and dark, frightening night. I was working on my cathedral. In the corner of my eye, as I was placing blocks, I saw something so frightening. There was something atop my bell tower. I wonder what it was. Was it some wandering trader or some frightening visitor? As I got closer, what I had suspected was not at all true. Right there in front of me stood a llama. Not two, not three, or a wandering villager in sight, just one single llama. I made no notice of it. I went back to building. After a couple of days, I went back and he was still there. perched atop like Quasimodo. I had been watching a show called Babylon Berlin, and one of the characters had a very fitting name, and so I named him Geryon. Many years later, I was building with my friend. We had decided to build a portion of the cathedral together, just as friendly matters. And when we were working on the building, in the distance, in the corner of my eye, I saw something so frightening and horrid. Geryon? Geryon? Geryon, no! Today, we mourn the loss of Geryon. He had come into our lives without notice, and so forth he has departed as such. How he came to be in Gofsberg upon the belfries is a mystery, but his legacy will be remembered forevermore. Geryon was not just a llama, he was my friend, but the Lord calls all of his children back home. Dust to dust, ashes to ash. But yeah, that's why we call it St. Geryon's. I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the easiest part. You gotta imagine, this is just a window. It's about 3 blocks deep. It's just a simple perpendicular English Gothic style window. We would have done a rose window, but I've never really done a perpendicular Gothic window like the English cathedrals. I mean, Gosberg has a rose window, so there you go. But I think the English might have won in this case because they bring in a lot more light in than the rose windows, and it's just a big sheet of glass. And well, with that, we're pretty much done. Day 3. That's pretty anticlimactic. Bloody hell. What's Australia? I think it's going great. I think it's bloody fantastic. It looks bloody beautiful. I did tell him to get more stone, but we haven't got more stone. And me, we're running out of time. It is day 4, and we're going pretty well in terms of building the cathedral. We have completed the main body, the apse, the ambulatory. Yesterday we did the transepts and the facades. Now we have this big old hole in the middle. And in most cathedrals, we would do a big crossing vault and, call it a day. But you'll notice that the light from the sun pours down into the crossing, and it'd be such a shame if we blocked that with a big old vault. So I'm thinking we build a crossing tower. In the original drawings, I did want to do an octagonal crossing tower because I've never done one before. I mean, you can see from the original drawings that I have a pretty good idea of what I want to build. Actually, I draw everything. Like, it's right there.
It's right there.
We're going to take some influence from Ely Cathedral and from Strasbourg itself and formulate some kind of design. Here you can see I'm actually building the vaulting to connect the actual tower itself, and from that we can extrude that octagon shape as we drew and planned. We'll actually do a quite small tower. You can see we're just doing a couple windows to bring light into the space. We're building up that sort of area, and on the roof level we're actually going to have a walkway where you can walk around. You can see the vaulting comes up and connects to the base of the tower, and we're just going to do a simple shallow copper roof, nothing too tall because we'll have quite a colossal bell tower anyways. From that, we can construct the vault for the roof of the tower, and then afterwards we sort of fill in the stained glass windows, and we pretty much have a finalized tower at the end. We're actually going to design the base of the crossing tower with a simple geometric floor pattern. This was actually inspired by St. Paul's Cathedral in Melbourne, but most cathedrals either have a labyrinth-like pattern or a simple checkerboard. You can see that we are finally building the roof, and with that, we have the crossing tower all complete, with a little mezzanine walkway on the roof level that lets us walk around, and access to the crossing tower is actually from the crossing columns. There's a hidden staircase inside of them, and would you look at that? With the crossing tower now finally built, we have essentially completed the main majority of the cathedral, and now our attention turns towards arguably the most difficult, hardest, and largest part of the cathedral. The narthex. is currently day 5, and we have pretty much got a good chunk of the cathedral. But what we are tasked in completing in these final few days is going to be the most challenging, complex, and arguably the most detailed part of the cathedral, because we now move on to the narthex. This is Notre Dame in Paris. Never been there, but we can observe we've essentially completed this main body of the cathedral, but we're now tasked in completing this front section. You can see the narthex is often split into different sections. We have the galleries, the portals, entrances, and arguably the most complex part of it, the bell towers. Now, this part of the cathedral is the heaviest, the bulkiest, the largest, and the most substantial. It is the main facade, the main hallmark of the cathedral from far away. But I whipped up this little doodle, so let's get straight into it. We can actually start building the main, narthex facade. We'll start with the base of the tower. We're going to essentially take the buttresses that we've completed and create a much larger and thicker one, make almost 4 corners. You can see when I'm building, I've created this layer with fences and walls, and that actually takes influence from the real-life Strasbourg Cathedral in its facade design, where it creates this diaphanous kind of facade that lets light go through. It has a almost secondary skin. It's a rather gorgeous but delicate really framework, and we can recreate the same effect in Minecraft. You get essentially 2 layers. What we're doing now is creating the portals of the main entrance and the main window, and you can see how in the second pass we add an additional layer of fences to create that secondary skin to give the image of the facade some depth from afar. Now we're constructing the base of the towers, and you can really get the sense of how colossal those pillars are when they are compared next to the original buttresses. Here we are now constructing the main facades for the first bell tower, which will get mirrored onto the other side, creating the arcades, the windows, the portals, and that secondary skin, which will actually end up changing later on, and essentially building up that framework of the bell tower as we get closer and closer to the base of the roof. The shadows shift as the sun sets. That secondary skin creates these beautiful trickling effect of the shadows, and we use blocks like coral, fences, tripwire hooks, all these little things to give and mimic the effect of tracery of the cathedral, but using them in a mannered way where they don't oversaturate the general build. Internally, you can see how the light penetrates into the space. There's no need for really glazing the windows, as this is just the bell tower. There's nothing really anything, and as you can see, building the narthex was certainly a unique challenge as seen in this first-person footage. And with that, we have 1/2 of the narthex completed, and we can finally start work on building up the base of the bell tower, which we will pursue tomorrow. As we draw closer and closer to our final date, we're actually forgetting something in the cathedral. And no, it's not the cathedral, which is what makes a cathedral a cathedral. It's the organ. So let's take some influence from Cologne and from Strasbourg and build an organ. We're going to construct a clerestory organ, which is essentially just an organ suspended in one of the clerestory bays. This gives us a very numinous build where the organ is suspended high above the nave to sort of really resonate throughout the cathedral. I've used bamboo, dark oak, and some bits of diorite to construct the overall shape. And in the end, we get this very, very simplistic build that surprisingly adds quite a lot to the cathedral's interior. And with that, we can move on to today's agenda. Because you'll notice we're missing a tower. I mean, we ain't got one. And we really ought to have one, especially for this cathedral, such scale, right? And I'm not gonna lie, let's just build one. So we're gonna take influence from, you guessed it, Strasbourg again. And I mean, like, it's a good cathedral. It's a great cathedral. What am I saying? And we're just gonna build one of these stairways that Strasbourg has, build some of the parapets for the actual bell tower, and from that we can just build one of the faces that sort of face externally and essentially they just clone it onto the other side. Oh my god, this is so loud, you can see by doing that we get these almost like 4 turrets, and we can essentially just copied the narthex. We already finished the base of it. And look at that. We now have the base of the narthex. It has a central narthex window. We would have done a rose window, but we didn't. And look at that. Look how nice the shadows dance in the light. And quite beautiful, I have to say. We have an internal staircase here, fixing up some of the bits of the narthex interior. And with that, we can actually fix up the floor. Going with a pretty simplistic floor design here, just cross. Is that what I really whipped up? And oh, I love this timelines. Look how well the shadows dance in this. You can see the arcade section that is that screen in front of the roof, and you see even internally we get that light to almost filter in through that window. And what a scene! From the narthex to where we're looking at, this is from the root screen, we get this very dramatic effect and almost collisionous as it enters into the cathedral. But focusing our attention back to the bell tower, we can finally start building, well, the final segment. All we have to do is just simply build a little bit of the scaffolding above here and we should be ready to go. So here we go. Oh shit. Upon further research, I found out that we are actually at build height. We're at Y320 and our spire in drawing is actually planned to be just a little bit taller. So we actually need to install a mod to build even taller in Gosbeg. So technically, while it's not the largest cathedral we've built, St. Gerion's will be the tallest, beating Gosbeg at Y20. So here we go. And as we ascend even higher into the heavens, that's a wrap for day 6. We did it! We have made it to day 7. And I'm losing a few marbles over here, but we are nearly done. And now we are tackling the largest section of the bell tower. Because today we are going to be building the spire. Now, our main influence is Strasbourg, but I've taken some elements from Ulm and from Cologne Cathedral as well, as they use these really beautiful spires. With the advent of build height being a thing of the past, we can now finally construct the spire to the desired height we intended. You can see that the spire actually isn't a solid structure. It's actually a combination of really just an open sort of faceted design where we have little fenestrations within the spire itself to give it the sense that it's almost this delicate structure placed atop the cathedral. In its final height, the spire itself actually measures a whopping 20 blocks taller than Gosbeg Cathedral. And while Gosbeg still holds its championship of the largest cathedral, it sadly passes its title of the tallest to St. Gerion's. But there's one thing still missing. Even as it stands so proudly above the heavens, the spire lacks one crucial feature. One piece to truly crown St. Gerion's completed. The lantern light atop the spire. I think we should do this the old-fashioned way. Okay, now we're at the spire. Just climb up this. I'm not going to use any mods for this. I sort of know what I want to do. I want to do a little cross shape almost. Build up some blocks to give me some height here. And I think we'll make a pretty noticeable one. Yeah, we'll make it out of, let's say, spruce. That should be pretty good. Okay, seems I need more scaffolding. You can see why I don't do this in survival now. Just like... Ooh. Just like that. Place another fence there. Ooh. One more fence right there. And... yeah, we'll put an iron bar on top. That looks nice. Does it look that? Ooh! Fell down. That's not... that's not good. We'll just put 3 lanterns. Okay, 1 there. 1 there. Maybe get rid of the scaffolding. And... we just need 1 more lantern to crown it all. That's it. I think that is it done? And it's finished. Oh my word. We did it! Oh my gosh! That has to be one of the most complex and absolute joy of a build that I have done today. It's done. It's really done. Oh my gosh. And with that, we have completed successfully a cathedral in 7 days. Some of you might be thinking, well, if it took you only 7 days to build this, why didn't you build Gosbeg any faster? Without Gosbeg, I wouldn't be able to build this at all. Things take time to learn, and to do them fast takes even more time. And that's okay. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It might have only taken 7 days to build, and it might take you a bit longer. And you know what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now you know how to build a cathedral. Go on and build your very own. We may make this build even available on my Patreon, but who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments, and I suppose we'll see where the next build will take us. But I must work on the next video now. Till then, happy building and take care.